The heavy rain poured down, soaking everything in sight. I was huddled under a tiny umbrella, trying to keep dry. As I watched from a distance, the man in tattered clothes, known around the city as Buba, stood near the marketplace. He always kept to himself, sitting quietly by the roadside, a small woven hut in front of him for donations. The locals barely noticed him, treating him like any other beggar. But today, something was different. His eyes were sharp, his stance tall and alert. Suddenly, he moved, quick as lightning, towards a sleek black car parked nearby. In a flash, he was inside and drove off, leaving me stunned. Who was this man, really? Buba was a mystery. Every day, he sat in the same spot near the bustling market of Ndaliba, a city known for its vibrant streets and lively people. He wore the same worn-out clothes, his face always hidden under a dusty cap. People would pass him by, some dropping a few coins, others ignoring him completely. But there was something about Buba that caught my attention. As a young boy named Kofi, who helped my mother sell roasted plantains at the market, I often watched people. And Buba wasn't like the other beggars. His hands were clean, and his nails were trimmed. He had a certain grace in the way he moved, and his eyes, though downcast, were sharp and observant. One afternoon, while I was packing up our stall, I saw something strange. A group of boys was teasing Buba, throwing stones and laughing. Instead of reacting in anger or fear, Buba just smiled and picked up a stone. With a swift, practiced motion, he tossed it back, hitting the leader of the group squarely on the forehead. The boys ran off, yelling in shock and fear. I couldn't help but laugh, but then Buba's eyes met mine, and I quickly looked away. Days turned into weeks, and my curiosity about Buba grew. I started talking to him, offering him leftover plantains at the end of the day. At first, he would just nod, taking the food silently. But as time passed, he began to speak, sharing little bits about his life. He told me he came from a village far away and had lost everything to a cruel twist of fate. He spoke of his family, who he hadn't seen in years, and of dreams long forgotten. One evening, as the sun was setting and the market was winding down, Buba turned to me with a serious expression. "Kofi," he said in his deep, calm voice, "never judge a book by its cover. Sometimes, people wear masks to hide their true selves." I didn't understand what he meant, but I nodded, sensing the weight of his words. As the weeks went by, I noticed something even stranger. Buba seemed to know everyone in the market, from the fish sellers to the cloth merchants. He would nod at them, and they would nod back, sometimes even bowing slightly, which was odd considering he was just a beggar. One day, I couldn't hold back my curiosity any longer. "Buba," I asked, "why do people treat you like that? You're just a beggar, aren't you?" He looked at me for a long moment before answering. "Kofi, sometimes what you see isn't always what's real. Sometimes, people have secrets that they keep hidden even from themselves." His answer only made me more confused, but before I could ask anything else, a loud commotion erupted in the market. A wealthy merchant, Alhaji Danjuma, was arguing with a vendor over some missing goods. The vendor insisted he had paid, but Alhaji Danjuma was furious, accusing him of theft. As the argument escalated, Buba quietly got up and walked over. "Alhaji," he said softly, but with a commanding tone I had never heard before, "let the man go." To my surprise, Alhaji Danjuma immediately calmed down. "I'm sorry, Buba," he muttered, bowing slightly. "I didn't mean to lose my temper." Buba nodded and walked back to his spot, leaving me even more bewildered. Who was this man that even the wealthy and powerful respected him? That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing with questions about Buba. I decided to follow him the next day. As the market closed, I watched him slip away into the shadows. I trailed behind, careful not to make a sound. He walked through the narrow alleys, past old houses, and finally stopped at a grand mansion at the edge of the city. My jaw dropped as I saw him pull out a key and unlock the gate. He disappeared inside, and I quickly climbed a nearby tree to get a better view. Through a window, I saw him take off his ragged clothes and put on a fine robe. He sat down at a lavish table, where a servant brought him a meal fit for a king. I couldn't believe my eyes. Buba, the beggar, was actually a rich man. As I climbed down from the tree, I accidentally knocked over a pot, causing a loud crash. I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. Buba appeared at the door, looking straight at me. "Kofi," he called out softly, "come inside." I hesitated, but curiosity got the better of me. I walked up to the mansion, my legs trembling. Inside, Buba sat me down and offered me some food. I was too stunned to eat. "Why, Buba?" I finally managed to ask. "Why do you pretend to be poor?" "It's a long story, Kofi. I was once a wealthy man, but I realized that my riches brought me fake friends and shallow relationships. I wanted to find people who would accept me for who I am, not what I have. So, I became Buba the beggar." As he spoke, I realized that Buba was not just a man with a secret, but someone searching for something real in a world full of illusions. I promised to keep his secret, and so, the tale of the Masked Millionaire began, filled with secrets, betrayals, and the quest for true friendship. But that is a story for another day. As days passed, the secret of Buba, the Masked Millionaire, weighed heavily on my mind. I still saw him every day at the market, sitting in his usual spot, wearing his old tattered clothes. Now, though, I saw him differently. I knew the truth about him, and I understood why he hid his real identity. But I couldn't shake off the feeling that something more was going on, something that even Buba hadn't told me. One afternoon, while I was helping my mother at our store, a commotion broke out at the far end of the market. I looked up to see a group of men in fine clothes, led by a tall, stern-faced man with a thick mustache, walking straight towards Buba. The market fell silent as everyone watched them approach. "Buba," the man with the mustache said loudly, "we know who you are. It's time for you to come back and take your place where you belong." I glanced at Buba, expecting him to look surprised or scared, but he just smiled calmly. "Oh, Chief Okoro," he said, nodding. "I see you finally found me." Chief Okoro frowned. "This is not a joke, Buba. Your family is worried sick. You've been hiding here for far too long." Buba shook his head. "I'm not hiding, Chief. I'm living my life the way I choose. My family can live without me. I'm not going back." Chief Okoro's face turned red with anger. "You are making a big mistake, Buba. If you don't come back now, there will be consequences. Your father won't tolerate this any longer." Buba's smile faded, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in his eyes. "Tell my father that I'm sorry, but I have to do this. I have to find my own way." Chief Okoro didn't respond. He just turned and walked away, his men following closely behind. As they left, the market slowly returned to its usual noise and bustle, but I could tell that people were whispering about what had just happened. That evening, I found Buba sitting under a large mango tree on the outskirts of the city. I sat down beside him, unsure of what to say. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "Kofi, you must think I'm a fool for refusing to go back," he said softly. I shook my head. "No, Buba. I think you're brave for following your heart. But who is Chief Okoro? And why does your father want you back so badly?" "Chief Okoro is my father's right-hand man. My father, Chief Namdi, is a very wealthy and powerful man in our village. He controls many businesses, and he always wanted me to follow in his footsteps. But I never wanted that life. I wanted something different, something real. So I left everything behind and came here." "But why pretend to be poor?" I asked. "Why not just live your life as you are?" Buba smiled sadly. "When I had money, everyone wanted to be my friend, but none of them cared about who I really was. They just cared about my wealth. So, I decided to live as a poor man to see if I could find people who would accept me for who I am, not what I have." I nodded, understanding more now. And have you found those people? Buba looked at me with a warm smile. I found a few, Kofi. And you're one of them. I felt a rush of warmth in my chest at his words. I had never thought of myself as special, but knowing that Buba saw me as a friend made me feel proud. The next few weeks were tense. I kept expecting Chief Okoro to return, and I could see that Buba was on edge too. He continued to come to the market every day, but he was always looking over his shoulder, watching for signs of trouble. One day, as I was helping my mother with our stall, I saw a young woman walking towards Buba. She was beautiful, with long braids and a bright yellow dress that flowed in the wind. She approached Buba with a determined look on her face. "Buba," she said firmly, "we need to talk." Buba looked up, surprised. "Neka, what are you doing here?" The woman, Neka, crossed her arms. "Your father sent me. He's worried about you." Buba sighed heavily. "I told Chief Okoro I'm not coming back, and that's final." Neka shook her head. "It's not that simple, Buba. Your father is sick. Very sick. He doesn't have much time left. He wants to see you before it's too late." "Neka," he said softly, "I'll go back. But just for a little while." Neka smiled, relief washing over her face. "Thank you, Buba. You're doing the right thing." As Buba got up to leave with Neka, he turned to me and placed a hand on my shoulder. "Kofi, I don't know what's going to happen next, but I want you to know that I value our friendship more than anything." I nodded, feeling a lump in my throat. "I will, Buba. And you take care too." As I watched them walk away, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. I knew that Buba was making a difficult choice, but I also knew that his journey was far from over. There were still so many questions, so many secrets yet to be revealed. And I had a feeling that whatever lay ahead, it was going to change everything. Buba's departure left a void in the market. Everyone noticed his absence, and the rumors started flying. Some said he had been taken away by the police, others claimed he had finally returned to his village. Only I knew the truth, and I kept it to myself, waiting for the day when Buba would return and we could continue our adventure together. But days turned into weeks, and there was no sign of Buba. I started to worry that something had gone wrong, that he had been forced back into the life he so desperately wanted to escape. I decided to take matters into my own hands. One evening, I packed a small bag and set out for Buba's village. I didn't know exactly where it was, but I had heard enough stories from Buba to have a rough idea. I walked for hours through fields and forest until I finally reached a small, quiet village nestled in the hills. As I approached, I saw a large crowd gathered outside a grand house. I recognized the house from Buba's stories like it was his family's home. I pushed my way through the crowd, my heart racing with fear and anticipation. Inside, I found Buba standing next to an old man lying in bed. The man was pale and frail, his breathing shallow and labored. Buba was holding his hand, tears streaming down his face. "Buba." I called out, rushing to his side. He looked up, surprised to see me. "Kofi, what are you doing here?" "I came to find you," I said, catching my breath. "I was worried something had happened to you." Buba smiled weakly, wiping his eyes. "Thank you, Kofi. It means a lot to me that you came. But as you can see, my father is not well. I'm not sure how much time he has left." I nodded, feeling a deep sadness in my heart. I didn't know Buba's father, but I could see the pain in Buba's eyes, the weight of everything he had been carrying. I wanted to say something, to offer some comfort, but the words wouldn't come. As we stood there in silence, I noticed a strange tension in the air. The people in the room were whispering to each other, glancing at Buba with suspicious eyes. I realized then that not everyone was happy to see him return. Just then, Chief Okoro appeared at the door, his face dark with anger. "Buba," he said sharply, "what are you doing here? You've caused enough trouble already." Buba looked up, his expression hardening. I'm here to see my father, Chief. I have every right to be here. Chief Okoro scowled. Your father doesn't want you here. You've disgraced the family enough with your foolish antics. It's time for you to leave. Buba stood his ground, his voice firm. I'm not leaving, Chief. Not until I've said my goodbyes. As the two men faced off, I could feel the tension in the room growing. I didn't know what was going to happen next, but I knew one thing for sure: this was only the beginning of a conflict that would shake the village to its core. And I had a feeling that Buba's journey was far from over.